What are the main reasons for account suspension?
Honestly, Sebastian, did they do the bad thing?
What are the things that they have to keep an eye on to avoid account suspension?
So it's a useful tool, but it's also a big lie.
So we have two options.
That is a great question.
Do you have any experience on that?
There's two tricks that I've got for you.
What all other services that you offer?
Ecom Squeezed podcast.
Welcome to today's episode of Ecom Squeezed, where we dive deep into the world of Amazon selling. I'm your host, Sebastian, and today we have a very special guest, Lesley Hensell. She's the co-founder of Riverbend Consulting and a published author of the book, The Amazon Incubator. Welcome to the show, Lesley.
Thank you so much for having me on, Sebastian. I'm excited to be here.
Great. So the first question, I know you are specialized in account suspension. So I'm planning to, throw a lot of questions at you because that's one of the fear that Amazon sellers have back in their mind. Account suspension in Amazon can suddenly jump on you, right? So that's uncertainty. It's behind their head. So in your experience, what are the main reasons for account suspension that you found, on a daily basis that you see?
The most common right now are related to either product quality or product authenticity. So product quality is where someone might complain about something they receive from you. So they might say, used, sold as new, or it's expired, or the box was open, the customer isn't happy. So most of those suspensions tend to be just for the ASIN. Amazon will block that ASIN, or they'll ask for invoices and information about just that ASIN, and they don't really come after your entire account. It is important to answer those because if you ignore them, Amazon might come after your entire account. And then the other big category is product authenticity, which right now means they are really on the lookout for any counterfeit merchandise, stolen goods, and what they're calling unsuitable inventory. And the first thing, because I'm a seller, I've been a seller since 2010, so I'm imagining myself listening to this podcast and saying, I don't need to listen to this lady. I'm not selling stolen goods. I would never do that. Of course you wouldn't do that. However, there are people who do. So Amazon develops patterns that they use to find what they believe are stolen goods. And a lot of good sellers kind of get caught up in that and are asked for documentation to prove the negative, prove you're not selling stolen goods.
Right. So it will affect if you're a brand, if you own the trademark and if you're a brand registered on Amazon. So will that, kind of safeguard you in any way, or that doesn't matter at all with Amazon?
It can help. For the most part, if you're a brand owner, it's much easier to prove that your goods are authentic, obviously. However, we do have clients who have been accused of stolen goods or unsuitable inventory when they are the brand owner, which seems insane. I had a guy I was working with just 2 weeks ago that he figured out the reason for it is that he has a product that is sold in retail stores, and it is highly stolen. It is a commonly stolen item in retail stores in certain geographic locations. And because of that, Amazon's watching it more closely and came after him, the brand owner.
Oh, right. Yeah. So you have to be careful. Amazon come from anywhere, right? Great. And on the question, you're specialized on Amazon suspensions, right? So on a day-to-day basis, how many cases do you deal with it, and how long it will take for that account to recover? I'm sure not all the account can be recovered, but in your experience, what are the success rate and how long it's going to take to get that account back?
At any given time, we are working on about 600 tickets at Riverbend.
600.
Yes. So. Wow. So some of those will be months old. Some of them are brand new. So the amount of time that it takes and the success rate really depends on the type of suspension, as well as how many times someone might have appealed before they came to us. And also, honestly, Sebastian, did they do the bad thing, right? Yeah. Because there are, I would say about a third of the enforcement that we see against sellers is a bad enforcement or over enforcement. About a third of it is sellers intentionally did the bad thing.
Yeah.
And then about a third is people who aren't paying attention. They're not doing the things they should have done, but they're not like a bad actor, but Amazon was, not wrong for enforcing against them.
Yeah.
So that impacts things. We have certain account suspension types that we have 100% success rate. Like Kindle Direct Publishing, we're at 100% right now. We've gotten everyone back up who's come to us. Something like inauthentic or like expiration, our success rates on those are in the 90s. They're very high. But then you come to us with things like counterfeit or forged documents or stolen goods. We're going to drop down to 50% or lower. There's things like platform manipulation. So that's when you pay people to give you reviews or give big discounts for reviews, get friends and family reviews. The first time you do that, your first suspension, our success rate is very high. It's over 80%, probably over 90%. The second time you do that, it is under probably 40% because that is really like a 2 strikes and you're out proposition. The first time you can get back, the second time you really can't. And we do lots of begging and sometimes get someone back, but it's very rare. It is so dependent on the situation, which I know isn't an answer anyone wants to hear, but there's so many potential factors.
Yeah. But I'm surprised to the amount of tickets that you deal, 600. Wow, it blows my mind. Great. And other question I have, Amazon have this new dashboard, right? Health check, AHR. What are the measures that a seller can see, if there is any signals that they have to keep an eye on? What are the things that they have to keep an eye on to avoid account suspension in your experience?
So the new dashboard, AHR, stands for Account Health Rating. So it's a useful tool, but it's also a big lie. So let me explain that.
Sure.
So it's a useful tool because now they have the scorecard sitting there that tells you this is the number of inauthentic complaints, this is the number of condition complaints, and it makes it much easier as a seller to walk down through those and address the problems. Before, you had to read all the messages over in performance notifications, they get lost. This way you can see the status of every case for every ASIN that you've had to fight back on. The account health rating itself, that's the little bar at the top. It's green, yellow, or it's supposed to be red, but it's really fuchsia. And if you're at or below 200, you are either suspended or at risk of being suspended immediately. That's the big number to know is 200. Getting above it, so it goes all the way up to 1,000, is really based on volume of sales. So if you're a really small seller and you're a 500, you're in great shape. There are some sellers who are at 200 permanently, and they're in great shape because they don't have any complaints, but they're never going to be above 200 because they're very low volume, and that's fine. But here's the part that's deceptive. If you're in the green, that does not mean that you're safe. It does not mean Amazon won't suspend you. When they rolled this out, they rolled it out like, hey, so if you're in the green, then, just pay attention and we're going to work with you. They kept saying, we're going to work with you. Not if you are accused of certain suspension types. You can have a rating of 1,000, and if they think you had unsuitable goods, which means maybe stolen inventory, or if you're accused of platform manipulation and buying reviews, they'll suspend you immediately. They'll shoot first and ask questions later. Another thing to know, though, is if you do see your number creeping down over time, you really do need to address those things in the scorecard. You can't just ignore them anymore. Once upon a time, I would tell people, you've only got one complaint, one ASIN was taken down for this reason. So if you never intend to sell that item again, you can just ignore it. And that was true. Now that's not true anymore. I encourage people to fight back and try and reinstate every single ASIN.
So, one of the common thing that when you get a notification on Amazon AHR is that to accept it or to submit an appeal, right? So we have two options. So, which option do you normally suggest? Should we appeal it always, or depends on the scenario? From your experience, which option do you select?
That is a great question. In general, I would suggest people always appeal unless you're in this very uncommon situation, which is you don't ever intend to sell the product again, and you really messed up. So you really messed up, like you sent the wrong stuff in. You sent in version B of the product instead of version A, or something else that was where you really screwed up. You can't find the invoice. Yeah, that's bad and scary, right?
Yeah.
So the reason you might just acknowledge and go on is because you don't want any more scrutiny on your mistake. You don't want anyone to know how bad your mistake was, so you just accept. But just know that if you acknowledge that, you can never ever sell that ASIN again, and you can't go sell it on some other ASIN. Someone else has a second listing of that same product or a variation of that product where it's a 2-pack or something, because Amazon will consider that circumventing and that you're going around the rules to sell the product. So just be prepared that if you acknowledge that they keep it closed because you didn't win the appeal, you better not ever sell that product again.
Right. Okay. So what if you try to list the same product after a few months? Will we get any kind of warning saying, okay, you had some issues previously, or there is no warning? And then you list it after a few days, you get a notification saying, okay, your account is suspended.
Well, you could get away with it. You might list it under some different ASIN or 2-pack or some variation. They might never find it. It's possible. On the other hand, they might find it and just suspend that ASIN and send you a warning, or they might take your account down. There's really no way to know which of those three. What I do know happens is if you have another issue, if you had a quality issue with that product, let's say, so if that ASIN got suspended again, or they asked you for invoices or had customer complaints or voice of the customer, if any scrutiny is invited to that ASIN, that's when you're in more trouble, because they're going to look and see, wait a minute, we already suspended this and they said they wouldn't sell it again.
Yeah, great. Also, on the follow-up of that question, we have to submit the supply invoice, right, for majority of the appeal. So will Amazon trace the origin, like from the factory? So if you're a reseller, they want to see the full supply chain to make sure that it is an authentic item. Do you have any experience on that? If Amazon keep on asking, okay, that invoice is not enough, we need more, we need to find out who supplied them. So it's like a chain that's going forward. From your experience, do you had any interactions with Amazon?
So this is one of the most maddening and frustrating things about Amazon right now. Because if you have an ASIN that is suspended or an account that is suspended, sometimes they ask you for supply chain of custody documents, and sometimes they don't. I wish I knew the magic of when it is which. I will tell you, if they have questions about your supplier doesn't quite look legit to them, or they've never heard of them, or your invoices look really different from other people's invoices from that supplier, then they're more likely to ask you for chain of custody documents. Getting chain of custody is really difficult because most of the time, if you're a reseller, why would your supplier want to give you that? Because then you'll just go directly to their source.
Exactly, yeah.
And they don't want you to know what the margins were that they're getting, right? So what helps with that, there's 2 tricks that I've got for you. Yes. So trick number 1 is Amazon will accept sanitized invoices. So what that means is that your supplier can black out stuff like what they paid. They can black out all of their pricing from their supplier. So you can ask them for sanitized invoices. They know what those are, and it will a lot of times make your supplier feel better. And then the second trick is I have had clients who have been desperate for these documents because Amazon, it was the only way they were going to let them back on. So my client drafted up an affidavit, and that they swore in an affidavit that they had notarized. So I don't know if do you have notary publics in the UK?
Yes.
So they went and swore under penalty of law that they would never go directly to that supplier. They wouldn't buy directly from that supplier. They wouldn't give anyone but Amazon that information. They would keep it all secret. They drafted up a document. You show it to the supplier first and say, if I go and have this notarized, will you give me the invoices? Will you give me their
So
invoices?
much, yeah.
And sometimes it has worked, because then I think the suppliers understand how serious the
Yeah,
situation is.
exactly, yeah.
And you're swearing, you're saying, you can file a lawsuit against me. I will have to pay, because right here I'm saying I'm not going to do these things.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a difficult situation that a buyer can be, right? And we talked about account suspension. What all other services that you offer? For example, if I'm a new seller and I want to go into a gated category, so is that service something that you offer, or to apply for to sell, for example, on groceries? Is that something that you do?
So we do help sellers with ungating, and that we will review their invoices with them, help them make sure that they meet Amazon standards. I would issue kind of a warning to people about using ungating services that say that they do it all for you. That can be a disaster, and the reason is a lot of these folks are actually using fake invoices to get you ungated. So what they'll do is they'll have an invoice from, so really common here in the U.S. in grocery, Kihi is a huge supplier. And so they'll take a Kihi invoice, it's a real one, and they'll Photoshop it and make it look like it was for your business. And then they will actually have access to your account. They'll get you to give them access, and they'll go in and submit fake invoices. Well, if Amazon detects that those are fake, you're done. They will shut you down for fake documents. If you're a new seller especially, you're not coming back. They have no reason for you to sell. You have no relationship with them. So the ungating services are really dangerous. Where we have been really successful is when people sell in a category or sell a brand for a long time, and then Amazon gates them out of that brand or category. We've had a great success rate of getting them back. They reapply, they don't get in for some reason. We help them build the case for why they should get back.
Great. And from my experience, I also noticed that one of the other reason that your account gets suspended, it's like you will get an email saying there is another related account. So maybe, I'm not sure how they track it together, like maybe IP address or something else, email address, we don't know. And I have an experience like that, and seller said, okay, the client said, we don't know, we don't have any other account. And Amazon will never say which account is that. They will not provide any information. So you are kind of in a dead end. We don't know which account they are referring to. So have you found any situation like that? I assume yes. But how do you deal with those kind of situations?
Yes, we work on those literally every day. We probably have a new account onboarded that we work on for related accounts. It is very frustrating because, again, you have to prove a negative. You have to prove you're not related to someone or not in business with them. So one thing Amazon has changed for the positive recently is that they will give you the name of the other account or the first two letters of the name of the other account, which can help you to identify who the heck this is sometimes. So let me explain real quickly why Amazon doesn't allow related accounts. So you can have more than one Amazon account. So let's say I sell beauty products that are my own private label, and then I also do retail arbitrage. Well, I'd want two different accounts for those. They're very different things, and you can do that. What Amazon doesn't want you to do is to sell the same goods on multiple accounts. That actually violates laws because it can be price fixing and unfair competition and all kinds of things. Also, what they don't want to happen is my beauty products are shut down for counterfeit, and then I say, cool, I'll just sell them over here on my retail arbitrage account, right? So that's what they're trying to prevent. That's why they shut down all your accounts if one of them is taken down for one of those reasons. So how do they connect accounts? There are dozens and dozens of ways they connect accounts. The most important ones are sharing financial information, so having the same credit card, the same bank account. You have to have a different bank account and a different credit card for each account. They'll also link you by physical addresses, mailing addresses, returns addresses, shipping addresses. IP is on there, your IP address. They are not supposed to use that as the only factor, because you and I could stay in the same hotel and be at a conference at a hotel with 500 other sellers, and we're all hitting that IP, right? So it's not supposed to be just that. They will link, so if there's that and several other factors. They also use what they call a fingerprint for your computer. So your computer has a certain screen with certain resolution, certain versions of certain software. All of that makes up some fingerprint of your computer, and they'll know if you use the same computer to log into multiple accounts. So how do you deal with this when it happens? Well, first, you have to do a lot of hard investigating to figure out why you're linked. I've known people who are linked because I've got one right now. Her current boyfriend sold on Amazon 10 years ago before they met and
10
had
years.
a suspended account. Yes.
So that means you
And
have
she
to be
got
really careful.
linked to him. I've had people who were linked because they went on vacation with someone, two families that go on vacation, they're both sellers, and then at some point they got linked because of that, which is terrible and crazy. Also, you could have sold, say that this is a scenario that happens so much you wouldn't believe it. So someone's in college and they sell their textbooks on Amazon at the end of the semester, and then they fail to ship them because they're, having too much fun at the end of the semester, right? And so their account gets shut down. 15 years later, they want to launch a brand on Amazon, and they can't because of that related account. So what you have to do generally is you either have to get the old account reinstated, which will solve your problem, or prove you're not related. Once again, we go to the affidavits sometimes to prove we're not related, swear that we're not related. You have to show all of your bank information, all of your documents to prove that you're not related. So going back to the old account, I know that sounds crazy, but that textbook scenario, we've several times gone back and reinstated the old account, and then
so that's 15 years, you said.
Yeah, I think the oldest account I've reinstated now is from 20 years ago. I think 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy, right? So means in my mind, I was thinking, maybe a few years that's all you can go back, but 20 years that's quite a long way that you can retrieve the account.
Yes, it's like going back to almost the beginning of Amazon enforcement.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, thank you for the answer. And the next question I have, this is something new recently happening. I saw one of your posts as well on LinkedIn. It's about the variation theme that you select that's causing the suspension. Yeah, I'd like to know more about it. What are the things that a seller can put in place to avoid that suspension, based off variation themes?
Yes. So one of the most challenging parts about listing products on Amazon is dealing with variations and variation families. And I think the reason is people who have any kind of retail background, they see their products in a different way than Amazon does. So anyone who's worked like in clothing, you see stuff in terms of styles. That's always the word that's used, is styles. Yeah. Amazon doesn't do styles. Amazon only does variations that are what they say you can do. So if you're selling a shirt, you can sell a blue shirt or a green shirt. So you can do color, you can do size, you can do quantity, and that's all. They don't want to see different patterns and different characters and all these different things that we would see as a style of a shirt. No, they want the shirt to be the exact same shirt. So a lot of times people get messed up on variations. Also, people abuse variations a lot, y'all. We all know this. It's because one version of their product sells really hot and the other one doesn't. So what do? They merge them into a family where they're both child ASINs, and they're similar products, but not the same. So, if you're on the desktop version, get yourself on the desktop version of Amazon.com. Roll over those options for your variation. The headline should be the same. The photo should be the same, except maybe the color changes or it changes to a multi-pack. The bullets should be the same. Amazon has started using AI to crawl through your product families and see where you're abusing variations because it's not actually a variation, it's a version or a style. So it's really important right now because Amazon, we are seeing people get their accounts suspended with no warning at all for bad variations. And so far, Amazon is not budging on a lot of these with executive escalations. We're pushing really hard. We've had some we've gotten back, but others, it's like one strike and you're out, which I do not understand. It's not like you're abusing sellers. Some of them are honest mistakes. Some of these variation mistakes are completely honest mistakes. but Amazon is having none of it. So it is super important, especially right now before Prime Day, and then again before a peak at the end of the year. Super important when they do catalog cleanup, they cannot find any variation violations.
Yeah, that's great. So, we have clients that they come and say, okay, look, we have a competition who are selling which shows the thumbnails. But we always say, okay, don't do that. That's on a different variation theme. You can't use that for your category. But they are doing it. There's no issues. But, as you mentioned, it's quite, anything can happen going forward, right? That's the main thing that you are saying. That's great. So I just want to switch to the payment side. Again, this is one of the main issue a seller faces. Amazon will hold the payment, right, for until the issues are sorted. Do you offer that service as well to get the money back from which Amazon are holding from the seller? Do you offer any kind of service to get the money back for the sellers?
Yes, we do. So there's a few different ways that this can go. First, unless you are about to be insolvent, if you have an account that is suspended, I really encourage people to work on the suspension and not ask for the funds until you have to, because it looks like you just want to cut and run instead of that you want the account back. So as long as you can hold out without begging for the money, do it. They are supposed to release the money after 90 days, no matter what the situation is. If they do not release your funds, then yes, we can work on a funds appeal if you've already exhausted all of your options on an account appeal, or if you don't want to sell anymore, but you just want your money. We can help with a funds appeal, which kind of goes the same way that the suspension appeal did, but the threshold is a little bit lower. So we have been able to get a lot of people's money back over time.
Great. Good to hear that. I just want to switch the focus on your book that you have, the Amazon Incubator. What made you write that book? What's the inspiration behind it?
So I think I mentioned earlier, I'm a seller. I've been a seller since 2010, so quite a long time. As someone who sells on Amazon, I get the question all the time, like, oh, how do I do that? People ask what I do for a living, and they're like, oh, how do I do that? And then they always say, the next thing they say is, yeah, I was on YouTube, and I saw those videos, and it's, and I know you've all seen them. If you're an Amazon seller, you've seen them.
Yes.
All the, it's the guy with the Lamborghini. Maybe there's a woman in a bikini on the Lamborghini. Maybe it's parked in front of a mansion and the guy's got a big watch on, and he rented all of these things. The Lamborghini, the house, the woman, and the watch. He rented all of them.
It's a common theme.
Video. Yes. And so what do they want? They want your $5,000, so your $7,000. That soon turns into $10,000 or $20,000. Also, there's a whole lot of do-it-for-you services out there that are scams. That they just take your money and eventually you get in trouble and you get suspended and you lose all of your money and your account and end up in the hole. So many of these things are so expensive that I thought, okay, well, what if we offered someone a book that was less than $25 and they could use that to make a decision about whether to sell on Amazon? A lot of people who buy into these coaching, and some coaching systems are legit. Some of them are good and they're offering you value for your money. I personally wouldn't go that way, but there are a lot of people who've gone that way and done really well, so that's fine. But shouldn't you have some kind of cheap option to learn about it before you have to spend the $5,000? So, so my book is a step-by-step guide. If you work through the 13 chapters, which are all very short chapters, there's questions at the end of each chapter. If you answer all the questions in that book, so about 3 per chapter, so you're answering like 36 questions, by the time you finish the book, you have a business plan ready to go of how you're going to sell on Amazon, what to do. You just have to kind of reorganize it a little bit. Just by answering those questions, you will have your business plan, decide what model you want to pursue, and be ready to go. And it's inexpensive. It's a great way to find out if this is something that's for you and your family.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I will. I'll put the link as well to the. I checked it on Amazon UK. I can see it's available to purchase. So that's very nice. And because your book doesn't have the Lamborghini and the bikini girls and stuff like that, people are not, they don't fall for it. People tend to fall for the fake ones. Unfortunately, that's a sad truth. Your case is a genuine one. You have the proper information, you have the experience, everything is there. So I highly recommend to buy that book. Great. So the final thought, from your experience, what are the measures that a seller can take to avoid suspensions? Like ASIN or the account level suspension. What are some of the basic steps a seller can take to avoid those suspensions?
So right now, the most important thing you can do is you have to run your online business as though it were an old school brick and mortar business. And what I mean by that is, a lot of people who start up online, actually I talk about this a lot in the book, a lot of people who start up online, they just kind of get going and they don't do the basics of registering their business, making sure they have all their invoices and receipts, they keep all the paperwork, they have a filing system. They're very old school about the way they evaluate suppliers or evaluate manufacturers. There's all the old school ways of doing that, which are very boring. That's what's going to keep you out of trouble. So you have to make sure you have all your documentation, you're buttoned up, and you're operating. This is a real business. Just because it's online, it doesn't mean it's not a real business. And so you really have to act like it and make sure that if Amazon comes to you and says, I need that testing document, I need that invoice, explain where you get your goods, that you can answer those questions. If you can answer those questions easily and you've got your verifiable passport and your business bank account and all those details, you're going to be fine.
Great. And for your service, do you offer all around the world, like UK or Europe, you provide? So where can the sellers find more information about Riverbend Consulting?
So you can go to riverbendconsulting.com, and we have forms you can fill out. We also have a phone number you can call. We have a UK phone number you can call as well.
Really? Wow, surprising.
Yes, we do. We love working with UK sellers. We can work in any marketplace around the world. It doesn't matter where it is. And just because the U.S. has been the longest running Amazon marketplace, we're one of the older firms that does this. We have a lot of ex-Amazon employees from the Seattle office who work on our team.
Really exemplary.
Yes,
that's a real assets.
Yes, and they're from seller performance and seller support. We have Costa Rican employees who are from the Amazon offices there, Filipino employees from the Amazon offices there. So we know how to solve the problem.
House behind it.
We do. We do. And so you're welcome to, if you have a problem and you don't even know who to go to, call the number, because we can just talk through it with you. And if we can help you work on it, great. But if not, we might have someone we can refer you to.
Yeah, sure. So I will put the links down in the description. And thanks a lot, Lesley, for all the wonderful insight.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, then. Thank you. Cheers.